And welcome back to the Autopilot On podcast, everybody. Episode 3, and we have our first official guest. Connor is with us today. Welcome, Connor.
Cool to be here, man. This is the first time I've done something like this, but I'm excited to join you guys.
Oh, dude, we're stoked to have you. So we wanted to bring Connor in because he has firsthand experience with the downturn in the industry and furloughs, and we think it'd be really helpful for people to hear his story and how he was able to take a really bad situation and make it awesome. Hopefully this gives some people some hope. So why don't you tell us a little bit about you and your background, Connor?
Yeah, that's right. I'm Connor. I'm from East Texas. I live in Dallas. Started my career in flight school in Dallas. Went from zero time to my flight instructor certificate in just over a year. Started instructing with that flight school up until coronavirus came through and really just decimated the entire industry, as you're well aware. I actually was valet parking for a while, about 6 months between flying and the new job that I had hustled up after COVID, excuse me. I was valet parking and I parked this fella's truck. His name's Hugh, who's a really good friend of mine now. I got in his truck and he had an aviation headset in the front seat and some pilot charts. So I parked his vehicle and followed him into the restaurant and asked him, if he was, obviously I saw where he was a pilot and I was too. And he actually got me back into the aviation industry via ferry flying. So I was able to get back in the seat that way. Was doing that with him for quite some time, about a year or so. And then I got hired as a right seater at Flight Safety, training clients. I was an SIC in the Gulfstream 650. We did that for about a year and a half, made great connections there. About halfway through working at Flight Safety, I was able to get hired on by a medevac company, single pilot King Air, and did that up until I got to the airline, got my time, got to the airline, and was there for just under a year, actually, about 340 days or so. I did the math not too long ago. And got the letter that I was going to be getting furloughed in April, and that was going to be effective on September 1. And just like the letter said, that's exactly what happened. So that's a little bit about me. I've done part 121, 135, and 91, done a little bit of everything. Made some really good contacts along the way. I think that'll be important down the road during this conversation, which is a lot of those contacts that I made, I had to fall back on, and it really, really paid its dividends on that deal.
Wow. Awesome, man. Tell us about when you got the furlough notice and how you felt about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So prior to furlough, I'm living in Dallas and I was commuting out to Las Vegas. I was 6 days on, 4 days off. So it was a pretty rough schedule, honestly.
Brutal.
Being a commuter, as you're well aware. So I was having a ball. Flying for the airline was a real thrill. It was extremely fun. I wouldn't trade that. Even the way it turned out, I wouldn't change my decision at all. It was an awesome experience. Got some first class training, got some part 121 experience, which was a dream of mine. That's why I got into this industry anyway. But to answer your question, Scott, I woke up one morning. It was April 1st, I believe, and opened up my email. And there was a company-wide email that said, due to some financial issues with this company, that they were going to have to furlough an X amount of pilots. And went on to the seniority list, started doing some math, and I was right smack dab in the middle of those people that they were going to furlough. So as you can imagine, emotions were high. Didn't really know how to feel. Didn't feel.
Did you see it coming?
There was some signs early on. To answer your question, John, yeah. Whenever I was in class, right whenever I got to the simulator portion of training, they stopped hiring. So that really raised some eyebrows. But we didn't think it was going to get to the point that it did, honestly. But that was the first sign that there might be something coming down the pipe. But yeah, anyway, so got the letter and I immediately went into defense mode. What am I going to do next? So I at least had 5 months from the time that I got the warning till the time that I was going to get furloughed. So I got online, I started applying to places. But with the industry as volatile as it was at that point and still is, the competition was tough. I really wasn't getting many interviews, really wasn't getting called back as much as I was expecting. So that was a shock. But the good thing was, well, you can call it the good thing, everybody in my class was getting furloughed. So we were all communicating with each other, ping ponging things back and forth. Hey, what are you doing? What are you hearing from these people? So we were able to really kind of get a good strategy and attack the job market.
Okay.
That's awesome.
What kind of places did you apply to?
So for me, I applied to some Part 135 companies such as FlexJet and NetJets. There was a few guys that did get picked up from our company, but whenever I told them that I was out on furlough, the conversation kind of changed. They didn't like the idea that I was applying to them because I was furloughed, which I didn't really have an opportunity. I wasn't going to be kept at the company that I was at, and it was being held over my head for these other guys.
What do you think about that? How is that? I never understand an aviation company always wants you to only commit to them and act like no one else exists when you're in a position where you don't have a choice other than to leave, like you said. How is it
Exactly.
fair? I don't know. This is my own opinion. How is it fair for someone like them to say, "Oh, we don't want that," even though, hey, I will rescind my, seniority number when I go to work for you, and they still don't like that idea? I think that's absolutely ridiculous. Just pointing
It's a
that. That's my own personal opinion, but it's something within the aviation industry I do not understand. How you want to?
it's a
Yeah,
catch 22, and
yeah,
it happens. Ask me. I have real world experience with that, to where the company that you're working for is not going to keep you on.
yeah,
Whenever you're interviewing for somebody else, that's a black eye,
Mm-hmm.
because they think in their mind, which I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but in the event that you do get hired by this company, okay, is he going to leave in a year or two to go back to his prior company? So I do see both sides,
right,
and that's kind of a fine edge blade in our industry. There's no right or wrong answer. I thought being out on furlough would benefit me, when in
yeah,
fact for certain companies it was actually completely opposite.
Mm.
It's I'm sure you can talk to other guys about it. I've talked to other fellows about it. But like I did say, there was I could probably count on one hand how many guys got picked up by a 135 charter, well-known FlexJet, NetJets, places like that. But I do know multiple, actually quite a few people that did not get an offer from them strictly because of the furlough.
Can I
What do you
add
Right.
one
think,
thing
Billy?
to that? I think the reason why a lot of people wouldn't want to touch someone with a furlough from the airline that you were at is because that job is a highly sought after job. Let's say if you went to one of the lesser known regionals that wasn't that great of a place to work in the first place, they would look at it being like, I think the job you're applying to with us is actually better than that. So you're much less likely to leave. But since your job that you had prior to being furloughed is a very lucrative job, they look at that being like, well, he's obviously just going to go back to that if he can. Does that make sense? So I think it depends on where you're getting furloughed from in that sense of if the job that you're applying to is actually better than the other one, on how the HR department is going to view it. I never really thought about that before until now.
Yeah, no, it's the truth. I think you're spot on there, John.
Did you apply to any other 121 carriers?
I did. I did apply to pretty much every Part 121 carrier that you can think of off the top of your head. The industry was extremely volatile at that point, still is. There were
Yeah,
guys leaving the airline that I was at because they saw maybe quote unquote the writing on the wall. Guys like myself with a little bit less time were not near as competitive as the guys who were jumping ship prior to anything getting worse. Any other news, they wanted to get out before any other negative news came through. So I mean, it was extremely competitive. It still is. I actually did get an email from a Part 121 carrier that I did apply for right before I just completed CAE training yesterday. Got a new type rating with this new company that I'm at, and right before I started there, I did get an invite to come interview. But the company that I'm with now, they're really taking care of me. Great group of pilots, really good company, flying for great people, and just happy where I'm at. Didn't want to if it's not broke, I'm not going to fix it.
Right.
Right.
You
Right.
know, I've seen the waves. You know, you gotta ride the high tide and ride the low tide out too. And while it's high, I'm gonna stay on the high tide. You know.
Right. I'm over here smiling because I've heard this story so many times in my, decade in the industry now, of just over and over again. And it seems to repeat itself because it's, new people come in and they don't expect that to happen. And then it happens. And then you see them go through the exact same thing you went through. And, it's the same old thing.
You never think it's gonna happen to you till it does, right?
That's exactly right.
Total.
So tell us about your new type, man.
Yeah.
Congratulations, dude.
Congrats.
Thank you guys. Yeah, I was talking to my folks yesterday. You know, it was a 3-week type rating course, pretty standard for these jets. In the Part 135, like CAE and flight safety, airline training is a little bit different. But anywho, I was able to finally press play on my life again yesterday. For the past 3 weeks, it was nothing but books, off days. You're going up there and studying, and it really paid off. In fact, my training went really well, and I can contributed a lot to a guy. My partner was actually furloughed by the same airline that I was. And so him and I came from a very similar background. We had really good work ethic. We worked really well together. We knew the expectations for these type rating courses. And it was him and I teamed up and made it a breeze. You know, we were really able to feed off of each other. It's the Gulfstream 4 G4 type rating, PIC typed on it. And
Nice.
excited to get out and fly the aircraft. We got a pretty busy summer ahead of us.
It's
Connor, what's
awesome.
it like going from 121 training to corporate, like 135 training? Like, what's the
Good
difference
question.
when what is that like going from, an Airbus back to a corporate jet? And then also, is there any difference in the training that is actually like fundamentally, I know like with NDOC and all that, does that translate over or how does that
It
work?
it's actually night and day difference.
Wow.
So with airline training, everything is it's organized for both, for 135 and 121 training.
Uh-huh.
However, 121 is much more organized. They have a set standard of flows that you're required to follow. They want you to know those flows from startup to shutdown before you even get to the aircraft, or before you even get to NDOC, excuse me. So there's a lot of pre-study, going over the aircraft, going over your flows. Whereas at CAE flight safety, I got all the courseware and I started going through everything to try and find the flow guide, as you guys are well aware of. You guys fly the Airbus, and they're just not there. They're not
They're not
published.
there.
So you're in there making your own flow, following the checklist, and I kind of underestimated that a little bit. So there were some long days where we're making our own flow patterns. The memory items, the limitations are all the exact same. You got to know those cold. But they do have really good instruction at these flight safety and CAE companies, semi-flight. So we had, I think it was 10 days of ground school, and we had 3 or 4 different instructors. So we were able to get, different opinions on these different systems whereas if you're learning from one guy who might not make a ton of sense to you, you got another guy that's coming in the next day to kind of clean things up.
Nice.
But as far as the knowledge, it's about the same. But the main difference I would say is the flows. And at my airline training, it took me 62 days to complete. It took me 21
Yeah.
days at CAE, so it was pretty high paced for sure.
Yeah.
What's it like going from the small or the big Airbus, like a 321, to corporate jet, like in terms of just the sim and all that? Because I know going from the Embraer 175 to the Airbus, it feels like just a massive airplane compared to even a regional jet. So I'm just curious on what was it like going from the big airplane, like a 321, down to like, I don't know how many seats the G4 has, maybe 5 or 6 or something like that. What is that comparison like in terms of even flying that? Is it just an
So I
airplane or can
yeah,
you
so
feel a difference?
How many seats does
I
the
would I would
G4 have, Connor?
say
I don't
uh
know. I don't know anything about corporate.
19 or so, but they're all configured different. But I know exactly what you're saying. But I think what I will say on that deal is the G4 is bigger because I'm taking care of the cabin.
You got everything.
I'm loading up the ice. I'm vacuuming the aircraft.
Do you guys have to
I'm
shop
taking
too?
out the trash.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, actually, no. The company that I'm with, they
Oh.
have everything set.
Oh, look at
but
you.
I'm still wheeling it out. So
Wow.
I would actually say the G4 is actually maybe a little bit bigger than the Airbus.
Wow.
Yeah.
See, I'm a
But,
fish out of water, man. I don't know anything about that side of the industry. So I'm like, a G4, Citation, they all are the same to me. They got rich
Well-
guys flying in them. That's about
Yeah,
all I
tiny
know.
little bug smashers.
I mean, there is something to be said about flying in the airlines, where you step in, you get to know your flight attendants, and then you hang a left, you start setting up the cockpit, and then you never even really worry about the back. Yeah, you worry
Yep.
about the back because you're flying these passengers, but whenever you're flying Part 135, Part 91, these guys in the back are the ones that are paying your bill, right? Or
Yeah.
paying your salary. So you really have to be very professional with them. But we know how they like their coffee, all that
Yep.
sort of stuff. But I would say there's quite a bit more work in the Part 135 side. We're filing our own flight plans. We're picking our own alternates. We're fueling. We're doing our fuel loads. So there is
Feel like
that
a real
aspect.
pilot.
I know it's a little bit of a change for sure.
Do you guys have Do you guys have flight attendants?
So we're flying this aircraft under Part 135. It's mainly used for just the owners. Typically are flying in this aircraft. They do charter probably 20% of the time.
Okay.
So whenever we're doing charters, we will have cabin servers. But typically with our bosses, they're pretty self sufficient. No
Okay.
cabin server.
You're the flight attendant on the owner flight.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. We're
dude,
loading bags.
Yeah. 100%. I just had a flight attendant come up to give us a break this last trip, and she was like, "What'd you do before?" And I told her corporate, and she was like, "Oh, I always wanted to be a flight attendant in corporate." I'm like, "I didn't have flight attendants. What are you talking about?" She goes, "What?" And I explained to her that I had to do everything. We had to do, all the pilot stuff, dispatch, planning, load the bags, serve their coffee, give them the briefings, safety briefings, and then we had to go on our quote unquote days off and shop for the aircraft. Like, we went to the store and bought all the supplies and stocked the aircraft ourselves. Her jaw hit the floor. She couldn't believe it. I was like, "Oh yeah, this job's way easier."
And you better have the Wall Street Journal and the Dallas Morning News papers
coffee, ice,
right
and
there,
papers,
too.
baby.
You know how it goes, Scott.
Yeah, man.
So John, are you have you been Part 121 your entire professional
Yeah.
career?
Yeah. I wouldn't say I've been lucky enough to not do it, because I was telling Scott or someone else this yesterday. I'd be like, man, I really wonder what it's like on that side of the industry, because man, I've been to Houston, JFK, like all these major airports so many times at this point, even 3 years in or 4 years in now, that it doesn't really make it interesting. But like going to Teterboro or Aspen, and like, sure, we can. Yeah, but like, there's so many different areas that you could go to within corporate, and I just think the avionics is what interests me within Part 135, and specifically just corporate aviation. Like, those airplanes you guys are flying have way better avionics, and I kind of missed that because I was instructing on a G1000, and I think their G3000s are the new Garmin stuff, or G5000s.
Yeah,
Like, I just
G5.
look at that kind of avionics, I'm just like, man, I wish I could go back and fly those types of airplanes and not have to deal with the airport. Like, I think for me, this might sound like an entitled thing to say, but like, my worst part of the day is usually going from like driving to the airport and getting to my gate.
Hold up.
And the way back.
You're Atlanta based. Yeah. That's like one
We'll
of the
leave it
most
at that.
difficult
We'll leave it at
airports.
that. When I was in Phoenix, I used to pay for parking on the airport, and it only cost $15, and I was from my car to my gate in 5 minutes. And I was like, going from that to Atlanta, man, I was so spoiled in that sense. So they just raised the rate to $100 a day for parking in Atlanta. That's going to go into effect next week.
100 a day.
It's basically 100 a day in the international lot. And the reason why is because I think all the guys for Delta that do
They
the
can afford
turns,
it.
like day trips, they're just like, we'll do it. Sure.
Sure.
So anyways, that's my hardest part. But
I I got a tip for you, John.
Yeah, what's that?
You need to get you a handicap tag and hang that, and then you're able to park in the main terminal for free.
Yeah,
Yes,
If
buddy.
sir.
you're a pilot.
Yep.
How
Next
do I
time
go
somebody
about
has
doing
concern,
that?
You'll figure it out.
That's
yeah,
hilarious.
I'm just kind of messing around on that. I don't
I
actually do
know.
that.
Little
Hey,
tip
you
for the
never know,
listeners.
right?
Little tip for the listeners. If you have veteran tags or veteran ID, most airports give you free parking. I know Dallas is really
That's
big
right.
on that. A lot of them do. So yeah, that's one way to do it. You could join the military, serve 4 years, and then come out and get free parking.
Another fun fact for you:
Nice.
whenever I was valet parking, as I mentioned earlier, I would see some of these vehicles would just pull right up into the handicap lot with no tag, and I'm like, I'm not going to sit there and say anything. It's none of my business. And then the guy that owned the valet company, I asked him about that one day. He says he brings me around to the back of the car, and there's a DV, and that means disabled veteran. They can park handicap
Nice.
without a tag all they want. So the
Yep.
more you know.
Yep.
There you
Little
go.
trips.
Well, so what I will say is, after being furloughed, and I think you've been furloughed too, Scott, if
Yeah,
I
I have.
remember correctly.
Yep.
It really increases your vision, and you really start strategically making career moves based on being burned the way that you and I have. So
Right.
you don't want to get too comfortable at one place. You always kind of want to be updating yourself. And my biggest thing, if I could get this through to anybody that's listening, is never burn a bridge and always stay current with your contacts, because that's the reason why I got back in this job that I just got, is because I had known this guy that I'm flying with. He knew I was down on my luck, and he was really pressing this company to hire me, and that's how I got hired.
Yeah.
So stay current with your contacts. You never know, and ever you might need to fall back on one or two.
Yeah, I think I brought that
Right.
up in the first episode. Network is critical in this industry.
Aviation is such a small fraternity.
Yeah.
There's not many of us out there. Everybody knows everybody. So I'll just leave it at that, as you mentioned, Scott.
Yeah, right. And there's, I don't know what how many pilots do we have in the industry?
I think
John.
it's like 100,000, something like that.
Wow.
90,000 in the airlines, I think, total, and then probably
Wow.
corporate, probably 150,000. So I mean,
Wow.
that's smaller than most cities in Texas, probably. In Dallas, even that's probably like a neighborhood in Dallas.
Yeah, buddy.
You know what I mean? It's not that many people.
No.
Oh,
And we all talk. Everybody talks.
yeah. I just grokked
So-
it. So at the end of 2020, there were 691,000 active certified pilots in the United States.
How many ATPs and commercial
Well, so
making
it
money?
doesn't break that down, but it says the number has declined gradually. In 1980, there were 827,000. So the number has been coming down. More recent estimates from 2024 suggest the number might be around 730,000, which would make sense and a bit of an uptick. That does not include,
I think it's a lot less.
Yeah. Well,
Just think about it,
that's
like
just,
between the
that's actually like
Go
pilots
ahead.
in the United States. That's not working
Sure.
professional pilots. Even if 25% of that work in the industry, you're thinking, that's 200,000 pilots, give or take, total.
Yeah.
It's not that many. It's super small world. Everybody knows everybody,
Yeah.
man. I'll talk to people. I'll fly with people that know people that I worked with 8 years ago. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
It really is.
I mean, what's the saying that you can basically know everyone in the world through like 4 people or like 10
Oh,
people?
what is it? The 6
Like
degrees
where-
of Kevin Bacon? Everybody's at least 6 degrees of
Yeah.
separation from Kevin Bacon, or at most. Yeah.
So and that's just kind of my perspective. That's the world. What, 7 billion people? Think about 200,000 or whatever that number is. I mean, you're probably not 3 people away in this industry from knowing almost everyone, which is kind of crazy to think about. So, or know of someone. So, yeah, that's crazy.
I want to go back, get a little detail, Connor. So how many hours a day, once you got your furlough notice, how many hours a day do you think you spent researching and looking for jobs until you got something?
Well, man, I would say I'd wait. I made it really important to stay on a routine. Usually I'd wake up in the morning, and from morning till around 11 noon was nothing but applying, researching. And I'd take the afternoon for myself and kind of do what I wanted to do. But I would say every morning for, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 months was nothing but trying to find a job. I mean, I have a house payment, I have a
Yeah.
wife who depends on me. And it was really scary, I mean, I never really got too down. I knew something was going to come around, and the right gig did. I had a couple regional airline dates for hire to start, one of them being GoJet and one of them being PSA. Had 2 start dates there. I really got to thinking about it. I mentioned earlier on, commuting was really killing me.
Hmm.
And
It
I
sucks.
think doing all that research was going to be, at least commuting for another 2 years. And I would have been much better off, me personally, just waiting out, trying to find something local in the Texas area. And it certainly paid off. But to answer your question, Scott, I mean, it was a full-time job. I mean, goodness gracious, I hate even thinking about it.
Yeah, good. I wanted to highlight that for people so they could see how involved it really is. I mean, you did it for months and months and months, and
Yeah, buddy.
it paid off. But you had to put the work in, and now your quality of life's probably way better than when you're at the airline. You're home based, right?
Yeah, I'm home based. I'm glad you brought that up. So I was a reserve pilot. So I would go sit up in Las Vegas for 6 days at a time. Sometimes I would get called out and fly all 6 days, and sometimes 0, sometimes 3. You just never knew. And you come home for 4 days, get caught back up on life, and then you're back on a jump seat headed back to Vegas.
It's like a
With this
prison
new,
sentence.
yeah.
I'm not even kidding you.
Oh, oh
Yeah.
man, it's I think everybody here's commuted, so you know exactly
Committing
what
to
I'm talking
reserve's the
about.
worst.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
horrible.
So with these guys, they pretty much have everything set out for the entire summer. One of the guys I'm flying, he's a pretty big alum at a SEC university. We go to every single football game that they play at. So I know
Hell yeah.
during
Do you get to go?
yeah. So we don't typically get to go.
Oh, okay.
But I'm going to be sitting around watching football on Saturday anyway, and we just hang out in the FBO. The FBO that we go to has a full spread, and I'm getting paid to sit there and watch college football. I was going to do that anyway. So we kind of know our schedule
Nice.
during football, and they have some houses that we frequent pretty often, so they know what days they're going to be going there. So I could pull up the schedule right now and let you know what my summer looks like. It
That's
might
awesome.
be 2 weeks
Wow.
off. It
That's
might
awesome.
be
Yeah.
3 days off.
You could actually plan. Yeah.
Yeah, I can actually plan around, and not saying that I can't get called tomorrow and have to go up to Newark or whatever. But that's kind of the life that we signed up for.
That's a good point, man. Like a lot of people listening probably haven't spent time in the corporate world. So, explain it a little to people. Like, so you're on call for the owner, right? Because you're 91 with them.
Correct.
Okay. So, what's your call out requirement time?
Ours it was 3. I heard that it's in the talks to get moved to 4-hour call out.
Oh, wow.
So that's even more than it was at the airline for me. At the airline that I was at, I'm actually doing a little bit different. They're actually allowing me to live anywhere that I want to, as long as I'm 2.5, a reasonable distance from the airport. I can get there in time. This aircraft's based in Dallas. I'm just bought a house in Tyler, hour and 50-minute drive. I was able to get a little bit more bang for my buck out there. My family lives out there. Her family lives out there. So, yeah, I mean, I might have to commute, an hour, 45 minutes to the aircraft.
Yeah, but you drive to work.
I drive to work. I'm not
Dude.
flying American on a jump seat,
Life changing.
Yeah, exactly.
Are you
It's so funny, you'll jump seat on these different airlines to work, and they're like, "Man, why don't you come work for us, dude? I've been trying."
It's the Delta guys. When are you coming to Delta?
It's like, y'all been in these seats for 15 years, and I trust me, dude. I've been trying.
Yeah. Oh no, I should put an app in. Thanks for telling me, buddy.
Yeah. So
That
funny.
is so funny, dude.
Are you guys at Love or DFW?
We're in Addison.
Oh, you're at Addison. Okay, even better. Okay. Do you
Yeah,
guys have?
so for people that don't know, Addison's pretty, DFW's here, Love is here, and Addison is right in the middle of the two.
Nice.
Do you guys have your own hangar?
Oh, we do. We do.
Whoa.
The company that we're flying for, that they have a massive hangar. We have 3 globals in there,
Holy
a
cow.
couple
Holy crap.
Learjets, RG4, and our owners are actually trying to get a new aircraft by the end of this year. So could be back in type school by the end of this year again.
Nice.
That's
So
awesome.
Is that like a
That's
flex for a company to have like a big hangar? Like, do
Yeah.
most companies just park it on this, like on, on the FBO, like pavement or whatever? Like, I can't even think of the word, but again,
Most
I don't know
companies-
anything about that part.
So yeah, I'll give you a little background on it. Mona works for a flight department, which is whether it's a company or a group of owners that have a fleet of aircraft, which is a little different than a standard charter operator. Sounds like they supplement income off charter operations in 135. Is that right, Connor?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So most companies, John, most big corporate flight departments try to get their own hangar. Makes it easier. They have their own fleet. Other ones,
Like having
if
their
they're
own
not-
gates, right?
Yeah, exactly. Other ones, they'll just hangar in like the big FBOs. That they'll pay monthly to have a hangar space in the FBOs. Other 135s usually like have a home base FBO, and the rest of the time when they're on the road, they just park it on the ramp. It's really really expensive to hangar in an FBO. So
Okay.
if the weather is forecast to be bad, they'll try to get hangar space. The problem is everybody else is trying to get hangar space. So now you're paying a premium.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
there you
nice.
go. Yep, they jack up the price. So you got to kind of be ahead of the game. It's a real big game, and when I was flying as a captain, like that's your responsibility to watch the weather, to figure out, are we going to need to hangar this thing somewhere, and try to work out a deal with them on rates. It's a lot of work, man, for people that don't know about it.
Kind of on that same vein, we were in Washington, D.C. for Trump's inauguration. And if you remember correctly, they had to move the inauguration inside because of the weather. So we flew down there, and we could have got a hangar for X amount of dollars. We decided, that's too expensive. We're not even gonna mess with that. Well, our de-ice bill was that times 2 to get out of there.
Whoa.
So it would have made more sense to hangar the aircraft rather than get it de-iced.
Yep.
But if you can hangar your aircraft, great. If not, it's not the end of the world. But you would like to get it out of the elements. But that's the deal that these guys have with this company. The company that I'm working for is managing the aircraft for the owners, and part of the deal is it's hangared whenever it's home, and that's a big incentive as well. But yeah, I'll send y'all a picture of the hangar. It's one of the biggest ones I've seen.
Wow.
Are y'all flying reserve, or are you guys holding lines over there?
I went from being on reserve. So to kind of back it up, I met Connor when I was at Scott's crash pad in Vegas. So that's kind of how all three of us know each other.
Crash pad.
Yeah. So that's how this
We're all roommates
group.
at one point.
Yeah, exactly. So I was on reserve just like him. I met Connor about 2 weeks before his furlough happened. So I only got to meet him a couple times. But at that time I was on reserve. I went from reserve in Chicago to Vegas. Then I finally got Phoenix starting in January. And then it was good. And then I had my training, my proficiency check, right, or whatever it's called. And so I got assigned a partial line. And then we actually moved to Atlanta the following month. And within February to July, I went from not being able to hold Atlanta for a year and a half to being 47% seniority coming up and being able to be middle 45 out of 92 or something like that in
That's
like
fantastic.
3 months. I mean, that doesn't really happen that often, but so yeah, I'll be holding a pretty good line coming up. I already am a line holder now, but it just changed overnight. It was kind of crazy how that worked, but yeah,
John,
commuting to reserve sucked.
When you went from reserve to line holding, describe how your quality of life changed.
Well, I'm going to put a caveat because I kind of am a psychopath when it comes to open time. And like, I don't
Your wife
really.
loves that.
Well, here's the thing with our airline, we have mostly day trips. So I actually am home every day. I am only gone 3 days in 45 days. I'm only going to be gone like 3 nights gone. So the rest of the days I'm home. Like I either am having breakfast with my wife and kiddo or I'm having dinner for the most part. So for her, she's like, well, if you're just doing a regular day of work, like go do that. You know, it's worth hundreds of dollars every single day, plus the incentive, all of that. So, you know, we have our own goals and we're both kind of aligned in that. So it's not like she's telling me not to. And of course, I'll respect her on that. But from my perspective, if I were to just fly my actual schedule, I don't know what I would do with all my free time, to be honest with you. And that's probably a me problem.
Hobby
But
time, baby.
yeah, I don't know what a hobby is right now. I got a
But you
1 year
will.
old and trying to save for a house. But no, honestly, going from commuting to reserve, I literally told myself when I started this job and afterwards, I said, I am going to serve my prison sentence and I'm going to get to the other side. That's honestly how I thought of it because I'm like, it's the worst thing in the world. I'm gone from my wife, I'm gone from my newborn child and I'm not there to support them. And I am in somewhere that I necessarily don't want to be. Like, I just don't want to be there sitting around doing nothing, wasting my life, it feels like. So once I got out of that situation, and I've been through that at SkyWest too, when I was at the regional, I went from community to reserve to being a line holder outside of base, back to being a line holder inside of where I live. And I would never do this job if I was a long-time commuter. I would not do it. I almost thought about quitting SkyWest at the time because when they didn't have a base in Phoenix where I lived, I genuinely thought, I'm like, I am not going to do this for the rest of my life.
Mm.
Like, I'm just not going to do it. My body was deteriorating. And maybe some guys are like, grow a pair in a way, I guess you could say. Like, I couldn't do it. I was like, I'm not doing this for the next 40 years. So that's when I seeked out the employer that I'm at now. So, yeah, to answer your question, it made the biggest difference in my life. And I will never commute long term again. I won't do that to my family. But we knew that coming to the company that we're at now, it was going to have to be like that. It's an investment you have to make. But a long term solution, no, we're not going to do that again. So, yeah.
Nice, nice. Connor, what advice do you have? Right now the industry is really just kind of in limbo because of the uncertainty of the markets. But ass- if other well, actually, Air Wisconsin, those guys all just got furloughed. It sounds like, and might be some more coming up.
Yeah, I was listening to y'all discuss that on episode 2 there. Y'all did a good job on.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Thanks.
What advice do you have for people that might be going through that right now?
I think it's important to stay on a schedule. Map out your day. Have goals to hit every day. Whether it's send 2 or 3 applications, start calling people, and you just don't sit stagnant. If you sit still, it could pass you by.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been a yes man. Somebody asked me to come fly, yeah. Unless it's like on Christmas Day that happened, and I'm like, well, I'm gonna say no today.
Yeah.
You have to say yes, whether it's going down to the airport and just riding around. I almost don't even want to say this, but I've done it. Start researching tail numbers that are just parked there at the airport and seeing who the owners are, and you get their websites and start sending emails to them.
Mm-hmm.
I've done that. It didn't work, but I tried.
Sure.
But I think the biggest thing is don't sit still. You gotta keep grinding. Something good will happen.
Yep. Yeah, man.
And fly as much as you possibly can.
I'm really happy you brought that up. That is a great way to find stagnant airplanes is looking up tail numbers. You can go on the FAA site and check out who owns them because everybody has to register. At one point when I was looking at potentially buying an airplane, that's what I did. I went to the airport, looked at the airplanes that have been sitting around on the ramp for months, or years, and reached out because I know plenty of people that have found killer deals on airplanes from doing that.
My wife, she would go to work and I'd leave at the same time. And I'm living in Dallas. I'd drive all the way to Fort Worth. I'd go to all of those airports and research all the companies are there. Hell, I was walking in resumes and to people. I was leaving them. I left one with a custodian there that was cleaning up an an FBO. They had a charter company, and I asked if there was anybody, a hiring manager here. She said no. Everybody's out at lunch. I said, well, I'll try and come back at lunch. I got a couple other stops, but if you could just hand this to your manager, that would be great. So I mean, I grinded for it. You got to keep good work ethic. That's what got you here. That's what's going to keep you in the game.
Yeah, hell yeah, man. Can I ask you a
100%.
question? For someone like me, I have most of my friends all in the airlines. Well, let's say tomorrow, boom, I get, a furlough notice. Knock on wood, that doesn't happen. But let's say it does. How do I go about that? Like, so you gave a lot of great advice, but my friends are not within the corporate environment. How do I go and tap that? Do I go out to Atlanta Hartsfield, like you said? Is there anything in this stance? Because I got around like 3,000, 3,300, something like that total, couple thousand of turbine, or 1,700 of turbine. Like, how do I translate to putting that 121 experience in my past stuff and just start knocking doors? Like, that seems incredibly intimidating for someone like me going to do that. Do you just do it? Like, do you just go
Yeah.
around and do it?
Hell yeah.
That's it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just do it, man. I mean, it's very uncomfortable for you and it's very uncomfortable for them. But for me, I'm very comfortable being uncomfortable.
Sure.
And it just kind of works, and you could tell there's not a lot of people doing that. So if anybody's listening is going through the same type of downturn that we all have at some point in our career, that's a start. You could always, make phone calls, cold call guys, hell, write a letter and mail it to the company.
Yeah.
A handwritten note, just introducing yourself, throw a resume in there, lick it up, send it out. And the worst thing they can do is say no.
100%. And then when it goes to tapping my network, how do I go about doing that? Like, do I just start calling everyone I know from in the industry and say, hey, what do you got? Like, do you have anyone that's looking for work or anyone to talk to? Is that kind of the best way to go about that for people listening?
Yeah, absolutely. I went through my phone at least 2 or 3 times in my contact list and was calling guys that I met at flight safety as I was doing my right seat time. Made some connections over there. Was calling them. Hey, unfortunately, Connor, we don't have anything, but we'll keep you posted.
Yeah.
Just start picking up the phone and calling, because like I said, the worst thing they can do is say no. And the other thing is, you got to keep these contacts fresh. I mean, I was calling guys that I hadn't talked to in a year and a half. They didn't even remember who I was.
Yep.
Once I kind of refresh their memory, they're like, oh man, I was actually thinking about you not too long ago. Now I got a new phone or whatever.
Yeah.
I'll save your number in my phone, type of deal. And that means stuff to people. If you just reach out and call, even if they don't have anything, guess what, they'll tell their buddy, or they might know somebody that has something. And then LinkedIn as well. I didn't have a LinkedIn prior to getting furloughed. I made a LinkedIn, and you'd be surprised on the action that you might get sent just if you put your little open to work tab on. That there's recruiters, that these companies pay recruiters to sit on LinkedIn all day and just search for applicants. For example, my brother, he's not in aviation. He's graduating. He plays college baseball at University of Louisiana Monroe in Monroe, Louisiana. He made a LinkedIn the other day, and he's getting DMs from people saying, hey, we see that you're open to work, and he has no work experience. So if you have a little bit of time, LinkedIn's also another good tool.
And it pays off
Right.
later too, because I actually ended up deleting my LinkedIn like, I don't know, 6 months ago, but I still get contacts via email and calls from recruiters from when I had that active, and they're aviation recruiters too. They're like, oh, we see you have jet time. I represent some big 135 company. You would be a perfect match for us. Are you interested in having a call? And I haven't been on there in 6 months, and they're still calling me. It's a good question, John, and it brings up a good point, because if you're getting furloughed from an airline, you have jet time, and you have turbine time, and you have professional time. And so the charter companies, they like that. And it puts you above all the other candidates that don't have that experience. But the big thing I was trying to highlight with Connor was he went out there and he kept grinding, didn't stop, didn't let up. And it paid off, man, which is really cool. I'm going to get yeah. One of my buddies, I'm going to try to get him on a future episode. He and I met up in Alaska, And, people always ask me, how do you get a job up in Alaska? And I tell them, the best way to do it is just buy a plane ticket, go up there with a stack of resumes and knock on the doors, because it's so hard to get a qualified pilot up there, or just pilots in general that have a commercial and they know how to fly. You're going to have a job if you just go up and knock on the door, because so few, they get emails all day long, emails and phone calls from people,
Right.
outside of Alaska, and they don't give them the time of day. But if you show up, you're going to get a job.
I didn't even think about that. Start going to these, Alaska's. I would call that remote.
Yeah.
Go to these remote places, and if you show up, man, if we have a need right now and you meet all of our qualifications, why are we going to let this guy walk?
Right.
I didn't even think about that. That's pretty smart.
Yeah. Yeah. You could, even in the lower 48, you can go find a town that's pretty small that has a flight department that you got a lead they might be hiring, and just take the time, drive out there, with the suit on and your resume, and be willing to talk to them. That's going to make you look way better than most of the people that are sending them resumes and email and phone calls.
The biggest thing that I got, because I went on a handful of interviews, and the biggest question that I got, now this is airline going to 135, is why 135? And the first couple of times I got that question, I'm like, it kind of took me off guard. I'm like, man, how do you explain this? Well, I've flown part 121. I now know what I want. I want 135. That seems to kind of smooth everything over. Maybe it's a quality of life thing, but yeah, I mean, the first couple interviews you go on, you're gonna get kind of stopped in your tracks.
Mm-hmm.
But the more interviews you do, even if you don't get the job, you're still getting more polished. And the more interviews you go on, the better you're going to get. So I would encourage everybody that's listening to apply anywhere and everywhere, even if it's somewhere that you don't want to go. You interview, and if you get the job, great. You don't have to take it. You can say no, but you got experience interviewing, and that's the biggest part of it, because an aviation interview is completely different than any other interview. You're not selling insurance, you're not selling vehicles. You're trying to prove to the company that I can safely operate your aircraft, and you have the experience to do so. And the more you do it, the better you get at it. So I'd recommend that everybody interview as much as you possibly can.
It's good advice.
I just want to say I'm really proud of you, buddy. I know I haven't known you for long, but I remember meeting you, and within 4 days of knowing you, you already were talking to people. He's not just saying this kind of stuff. I saw this in action from the short time I've known you. And I'm like, if anyone deserves to be in the position that you're in, it's definitely you. But that definitely is on hard work. And what he's saying about his connections, he was having 5, 6 phone calls with people, tapping his network, doing what it took. And I think for everyone listening, you are the person that defines your own success. Go out and get that job that you're looking for. He had a choice. He could have either been like, you know what? My life sucks. I just got screwed over. 5,000 different excuses. But he didn't. He went out there and he made it happen. So good on you, brother. I'm just that's super cool to hear a story from someone our age going out there and doing it. And I have a lot of empathy, because that could have definitely been me. So, and I think you did a really good job exploring for our listeners. If they find themselves in that position, which most of us probably will in our career, knock on wood, again, that doesn't happen, but there's realities to face, right? I think you told a lot of good advice today.
I hope so, man. I hope everything came out clear. And
100%.
Again, man, if anybody needs anything, needs somebody to talk to, get with Scott, get my number. I'd be happy to talk to anybody, man. This has been really fun. And again, this is kind of the first time I've done something like this, but man, y'all have me on anytime, because
it's fun.
Sitting around with the boys talking planes, man.
It's basically what it's designed to be. Don't give a number, but I'm curious, so you started in the right seat at your company, now you're in the left seat, right?
That's right.
Okay. So not giving a specific number, when you left the airline, how did your financials change once you got to this point, or this company?
That's a good question.
Let me think on that just 1 second here. So got furloughed. So to answer, like I said, I knew I had a 5-month notice that I was going to get furloughed, right? And so me and the wife, we started, budgeting. We weren't eating out near as much. We were doing a lot of cooking, which we do anyway. But we really started saving some money up, and we knew that we were going to get something, whether it was something that we wanted or not. We were going to have to at some point do it. So we saved enough money to have for a good while, more than enough.
Yeah.
To keep us above ground level. My wife also, she's a nurse, so she was also had a steady paycheck coming in. That was very nice. She was wearing the pants in the relationship there for a little bit. But it is what it is. We made it work, and this furlough
You're
brought
a
us a lot
team.
closer together. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We're a team. And then I started doing some odd jobs. I went back to ferrying these aircraft that I previously mentioned, and was doing that for a day rate 5 or 6 times a month. Not a lot, but and you still
It
keeping the money
helps.
coming in.
Something,
It
yeah.
Yeah.
helped, and luckily we never ran out of money. Even in the event that we did, I'm fortunate enough that our families really support us mentally, emotionally, physically, and in the event that we needed it financially, and they made that known. So I do want to shout them out on that. There was never just a ton of pressure. They wanted me to find the right job, but kudos to them, because they were really supportive throughout this entire process. My dad, he learned more about airlines in the 5 months of my furlough notice than he did in his entire
Yeah.
life. My family was really involved in reading about it. They were helping me make decisions. So shout out to my support system.
Good.
Right.
Are you making more now?
I am.
Yeah.
Oh
So
yeah.
I wanted to
Yeah,
highlight to people.
it
Yeah, you can make way more.
it was not a lateral move.
That's good. That's good. When you were in the right seat, were you making more than you were at the
I
airline?
was.
Oh, see, that's great.
I was. So the thing is, and this is, I'll leave y'all with this. Whenever you're a new FO at an airline, you have no seniority. They're starting you off at bare bones. It's plenty enough to survive.
Nowadays, yeah.
With these new contracts that these airlines are giving, it's great money. It's good money for the job that we do. You can go to 135, maybe make a little bit more, but you're not going to have the benefits that the airline's going to give you. The retirement, the health insurance, the dental insurance is second to none at the airline versus 135 companies. The insurance maybe not be as great. The 401k is not as great. Might be making a little bit more money on the front end, but whenever you upgrade to captain, or maybe you're a career FO and you've been there for 20 years, you're still going to be making a good chunk of change. You gotta value what's more important for me. For me, I didn't really have a decision. I just had to make a move because I didn't have another choice. But if you're debating on whether staying 121 or 135, sit down, write out what you love about the airline. Benefits are a big part of that.
Mhm.
Pay is a big part of that. 135, some 135s, you're on for 2 weeks, off 2 weeks. This job for me is not like that. There's a lot of them that are. So sit there and do your research.
Good advice. Good
Love it.
advice.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Well, I really appreciate you coming on, Connor. I hope this helps people out. And like Connor said, if anybody has any individual questions, you could reach out to us. The email is autopilotonpodcast@gmail.com. You can go to our website, autopiloton.com. It's all one word, no hyphens or anything. You can send us
Send it in.
inquiry in there. I could put you in touch with Connor for individual questions. I've been furloughed as well, so I can gladly answer questions. And we want to have more conversations like this to help people out. So that, for myself, Connor, and we'll call him Prison Sentence John from now on. Thanks for tuning in this week, everyone.
Yeah,
Coming to you. Last week
that
I
was a
was
good little
in
drop
I was
there,
in the
John.
bathroom. This week I'm in the prison sentence. So keep it coming.
Looks like you're in a library or something right now.
Yeah, dude. I'm outside of Starbucks right now. So Starbucks John, you can call me that too.
Starbucks John serving his prison sentence.
This has been fun, guys. Yeah, hey, y'all bring me on anytime. I'd be more than happy to do it. This has been really fun.